welcome to tonight's webinar, Understanding Migraine and Suicidal Ideation. I am Elizabeth Henry Wire. I am the Executive Director of the Danielle Foundation. Our mission is to empower those living with migraine through advocacy, education, and support. Next slide, please, Dan. Just a reminder before we begin, the content of this webinar is intended for educational purposes only. It's important to consult your own healthcare provider to address your specific needs and circumstances. Tonight, I am happy to be joined by Dan Kaufmann, PhD. Dan is the facilitator of our Migraine Management Program here at the Danielle Foundation. He is a research assistant professor in the Division of Rheumatology at the University of Utah. His research focuses on how sex, stress, and trauma influence migraine and chronic pain, and he is currently training as a clinical mental health counselor to better integrate psychological approaches like EAET and biofeedback into treatment. Dan, I'm excited to welcome you here today. Migraine and suicide has deeply impacted me and my family, and I'm very grateful that you're here today to guide this conversation for us.
So much. Thank you, Elizabeth, and welcome everybody. I really want to thank everybody for showing up today, either for yourself or for someone else that you know or care about. And before we begin, I just want to say that this webinar is all about opening up a conversation that most of the time is shrouded with silence. This is a tough topic that we're going to talk about, which is suicide, and we are here to talk about it, not to sensationalize it, but to actually normalize it, to understand it, and to support it. And actually, I just wanted to share with everybody before we start that when I first heard about the attempt of doing this webinar about suicide, it's like I felt really strongly about wanting to do this webinar. And I remember talking to Elizabeth and really wanting to do this webinar. It's like I had this inner drive to really present it. And I try to ask myself, why is it that it's so important to me? And one thing, so several things that came to mind. First, I've been working, first of all, with the Danielle Henry Foundation and with people with migraine for several years right now. And I have to say that the migrant community became so important to me, and I always feel so saddened by all the stories, by all the experiences that people come to us and talk to us, especially those who are stigmatized and misunderstood, especially by people who are around them. And suicide is one problem that is also shrouded by stigma. And it always hurts me when I hear that because there's so much to be done. And also, I think that we all know, and if we don't, then we'll just mention that the reason for this webinar is because of someone recently that we lost her for migraine. She died by suicide, and when I heard that, immediately I was asking myself, did I know her? Was she in one of our courses? Was there something we could have done? It really impacted me. And so that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to give this webinar, but also I'm going to share something personal with all of you that about 16 years ago, I also had not just suicide ideation, I started making a plan. And long story short, luckily, things have changed for the better, and I'm here with all of us, with all of you. But as I was preparing this webinar, it was so clear to me that if someone knew some of the things that we're going to talk about, I could have felt so much better and it could have really impacted me. And so I'm really, really hopeful that all of you that are with us are going to benefit from this webinar, are going to take information from it, and hopefully use it to help whoever is it that needs to be helped. And we do have people that we know that might use all this information. And so before we continue on, because we're dealing with such a tough topic, I would like to do a very, very short grounding exercises for everybody that are listening. And if at some point during this presentation anybody feels maybe overwhelmed or some emotions coming up, you can use that relatively short exercise to kind of ground yourself. So again, it's going to be very, very short. I'm going to ask all of you to just sit comfortably and just sit on the chair. You can lie on your bed if you want to. You can leave your eyes open or closed, but just start by noticing your body. And just start by taking some deep breaths. Not too deep, just comfortable. And just focus on your inhale and focus on your exhale. And just notice that just by noticing your inhale and exhale, you can just allow whatever is it to be and just allow whatever emotions or whatever thoughts to just be there. And the more you focus on your breathing, the more it allows you to just pay attention. Without making anything happen, just pay attention. And as you're doing that, just noticing your breath in and out, I'm inviting you now to identify 3 things that you're sensing in your body. Could be maybe the shirt on your body, maybe your feet on the floor, maybe the sensations that your breath is making, maybe your arm next to you. Choose 3 things and name them to yourself. My shirt, my feet on the floor, my arms. After you name those 3 things, I'm inviting you to notice 2 things that you hear right now. One can be my voice, but another can be something else, maybe cars or traffic outside. Maybe there are birds chirping, maybe, I don't know, maybe air conditioning is working, you hear that. Maybe there's background noise, maybe someone in the other room. Just knowing 2 things that you hear right now. And lastly, I just want inviting you to name 1 thing that you see in your mind's eye, or if you kept your eyes open, that you see in the room. Just something neutral. Maybe think of something, it could be, I don't know, a place, and maybe name a tree, or name a plant, or name someone that you like. Just name 1 thing. And so again, just 3 things that you sense, 2 things that you hear, 1 thing that you see, and just name them. And with that in mind, go ahead, and if you had your eyes closed, you can open your eyes and be with us in the here and now. And that was just a very, very short exercise just to ground ourselves before we're going to talk about something that might be a little difficult. And I'm inviting everybody, if at some point during this talk you get anxious or overwhelmed, or if the information is maybe too much, you can just use that exercise kind of like as an anchor, as a something to use if you need it. So I just want to make sure everybody are well taken care of. So, our topic today is when the pain feels too heavy, understanding migraine and suicidal ideation. And so, why we are here is it's important to know that in this presentation, we will talk about suicide, but more so, we will spend much time on talking about suicide prevention. And I want to say at the beginning is that we can't always prevent or remove suffering and pain, which is why we're here, but we can all learn to help cultivate some hope, support resilience, learning more about suicide, and really learn about some effective tools that can help those who might need us. So we will learn about all sorts of clues and behaviors known as warning signs, and we will learn about what suicide is and what someone is thinking. And it's important to know that suicide affects people living with migraine at higher rates because of that condition. And because of the difficulty of that topic, people choose not to talk about it. But the fact is that silence, keeping it a secret, keeping it of something that is tabooed, really helps no one. And so we actually want to open it up and want to talk about it, even if it's difficult. I hope that you all can feel that this is a safe an honest space. We welcome everybody. We welcome all of you with no judgment. We want to hear about your experience, and we really welcome everybody and all the questions that you might have. This is an accepting and safe and hopefully honest place that you will agree with that we want to welcome everybody. It's also important for us to remember that people who have suicidal ideations, they're not at fault. They're not to blame. They are the focus of this talk because it is important to keep understanding their point of view so we can help them better. We also know about families who lost people to suicide, and they also want to be heard as well. Maybe some of them are with us. So we want to open this up so that all of us can learn, listen, and understand. And also, very importantly, we are here because we want to honor Danielle Henry and others who ended their lives due to migraine. This is what we're here for. And I really, really hope that the contents of this webinar and the information would hopefully help prevent anybody from attempting suicide and killing themselves by suicide. This is my hope. I would also want to state about the goals of the webinar. The first goal is to increase our awareness of suicide. As I mentioned, it's a tabooed topic. We don't want to talk about it, but silence doesn't help us. It is important that we increase our awareness to how much it's prevalent and what suicide actually is. So we want to learn about suicide. We want to learn about the warning signs of people who commit suicide, who die by suicide. And learning about suicide prevention tips is going to be the major part of this webinar. And hopefully, once we talk about all of this, I hope that we can actually reach a point that we understand that people who have those suicidal ideation, they're not crazy, they're not nuts, and they definitely should not be blamed for. It is to normalize this behavior and is to normalize those people who struggle with suicidal ideation. So let's start. Let's really talk about suicide, but without the shame. And the reason I'm saying that is because, again, as I mentioned, and I know that maybe I'm repeating myself, but it is a taboo topic. People are afraid to talk about it for all sorts of reasons. Maybe if I talk about it, I'm going to make someone do it, I'm going to instill that thought in their mind. But it's actually not, as we're going to talk about it. Suicide is not a dirty word. It's an important topic and it's important phenomena, and it's a phenomena that destroys families. And it's important to discuss this and hopefully learn how and what we can do to help those who are experiencing suicidal ideation. Talking about it does not cause damage. On the contrary, talking about suicide, learning all the tips about suicide can actually save lives. When we don't talk about it, when we keep it taboo, when we keep the idea of people with suicide are crazy or there's something wrong with them, when we have these judgments about suicide, it actually blocks connection. And when we adhere to those ideas, we're actually preventing someone who might be struggling reaching out to us. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to show a movie when we're going to actually listen to people who survived a suicide, trying to kill themselves. And in that sense, they actually are going to be sharing with us how it felt when they tried to reach out to others. So this is the purpose, to actually open this up for discussion and for learning about this. So the first thing I would like to do, because the essence of this webinar is actually going to be on providing a lot of you with actual tips and knowledge so you can actually use, if God forbid you would need to use it, and if you see or talk to someone who actually is in need of your help. So I'd like you all to look at that screen and let's test how much we know about suicide. Number one, what are the three critical warning signs of suicide? Does anybody know about it? True or false? You should never ask someone if they're thinking about suicide. Number three, what are three ways to help someone who is having thoughts of suicide? And number four, name at least two suicide prevention resources available 24/7. Now, this is not a test, and we're not giving any grades to anybody in here. This is just to prepare you, because we hope that at the end of this webinar, you will be able to answer all of those questions, which is the topic of this webinar. So I want to start by just briefly talking about what is suicide. What do we know about suicide? Usually when we talk about suicide, the name Edwin Schneidman is mentioned because he was a very, very known suicidologist. He researched about suicide. And one thing that he said about suicide is that suicide is a conscious act of self-induced annihilation, which is perceived as the best solution. And there are several things that he mentioned that are very, very important. Because one, we know that suicide is a self-induced annihilation, but it's also perceived as the best solution. Why is it perceived as the best solution? Because of another term that he coined, which is psych ache. Psych ache is true pain of the psyche. He meant that the author of suicide, the prime reason where people start to have suicidal ideation and suicide behavior is because of pain. And the idea is that suicide is perceived as the best solution because suicide is an attempt to end the suffering. It's not necessarily about wanting to die. It is about the fact that people who have suicidal ideation and suicide behavior actually do want to end their suffering. They're experiencing psych ache, and this pain is unbearable. And because of that pain and other factors that we're going to talk about, it's like they have a constricted view, and it's like suicide is the best solution that makes sense to end the pain. A lot of us think that people who actually attempt suicide, they want to die. But the fact is that the amount of pain is so significant that it is about ending the pain, not necessarily wanting to die. And it's also not about weakness. It's mostly about the pain and ending the pain. So when we talk about, oops, I'm sorry, that's sorry, I took it backward instead of forward. When we think about why do people die by suicide, there's a lot of theories and a lot of reasons, but what I want to emphasize is that there's never one reason why people want to die. It's never a one factor or one thing that we can pinpoint to. It's always a mixture of a lot of factors and a lot of things. It's never only one. But what we're going to talk about is just some things or some possibilities that might go through people's minds that propel them to start having suicidal behaviors. Some of them are psychological factors. As we mentioned about psychache, psychological pain is very prevalent. That is the main driver of people who start suicidal ideation or suicidal behavior. The internalized and very significant pain and inability to know what to do about it. And as I mentioned, constricted thinking is when there is no other solution, when it makes perfect sense to someone that suicide is the only option to end the suffering. And perceived inability to cope, it's like there's nothing I can do anymore. There's nothing anybody can help me. There is no hope. There's no solutions. So again, it makes perfect sense in that point that suicide is going to end my pain. So all those psychological factors can be very much contributing to suicidal behavior. Hopelessness. Sometimes we feel that what we want to happen, maybe some resolution, will never occur. And the opposite, the aversive outcome, is most likely and surely to happen. And again, this perceived helplessness, there is nothing to do and there's nothing I can change the situation. So again, a sense of helplessness. A lot of other triggers can include interpersonal issues, which may not per se, as I mentioned, is never one factor, but all of those can contribute to suicidal behavior. Sense of loneliness when I don't have anybody around me. So what's the use? I might as well just end this. I might just kill myself. Failed relationship, like broken hearts, and the thinking I would never find anybody else that would love me. Abuse, neglect, bullying, all of those can very much contribute to that sense. Perceived burdensomeness is something that is very, very important because a lot of times people who start having suicidal ideation or suicide behavior really think that they're a burden. Because of so and so, I'm a burden. So it makes a lot of sense to them that if they're a burden, then it might be the best solution for me to kill myself, and then I'm stopped going to be a burden to other people. And in that case, I'm not going to bother anybody. They are going to be better off without me because I'm a burden. Belongingness, when people don't feel connected to anyone for all sorts of reasons. These are all can be triggers that might influence people to go ahead and act on those ideations or behaviors. Other importantly is mental health struggles. People that have significant severe depression or post-trauma or bipolar disorder. These can be predictive factor, but I also want to emphasize that in a lot of cases, people who were found actually acting upon their ideations, at that time may not qualify to be diagnosed with either of those mental health struggles. So it's not necessarily that if I have depression or bipolar or PTSD, it's not a necessary component for suicide, but it can be a contributing factor. Situational stress can propel people to do something that would end their lives. If they lost their job, if they have financial ruin, housing insecurity, all of those situation stresses that might occur at work also can propel someone to think, okay, the pain is too unbearable. I might be better off dead. Chronic diseases, chronic pain, repeated physical ailments, these are also, especially because a lot of times the pain is unbearable. It contributes to the psychic, and especially when there's no other things to do, no medication. I've tried it all. I've done everything. I've talked to everybody. There's no solution. So it makes sense that I would probably want to end their life. Escape from all sorts of situations, falling short of our own or other standards. If I feel that I'm subpar, if I feel that I don't add up, that I don't match some people's expectation, if I blame myself, if I have this heightened awareness that something is wrong with me, I'm deficient. So the best way is self-annihilation. Those are all can be contributing factor. Again, I want to emphasize it doesn't mean that if we have one or more of those, it is a necessary requirement. These are all just things that may propel people to act upon suicidal ideation. So we want to be aware of them because once we are aware, we might be able to address them better. Hope is can be very much a hard work. As I mentioned at the beginning, suicide is very much surrounded by stigma. And the thing is that if I'm having suicidal ideation, I might not want to tell this to anybody because I'm already have problems with myself, so I might be very concerned with how someone else might be thinking about me. And if that's the case, I'm probably not going to seek help. So, with that in mind, we're just contributing to the cycle of silence. Because of the stigma, because the people who actually do have those ideations and do maybe think of ending their lives, they're not going to talk to anybody because of that stigma, because we shouldn't talk about it. And if they're not talking, then we're not going to be able to know unless we fully ask as we're going to talk about it. So we want to really learn about it so we can end the silent cycle. I want to emphasize again, a lot of times we think that people who have suicidal ideation that actually want to die. But the fact is that when people have suicidal ideation, they're in conflict. There is a part that doesn't want to die, but there is another part that doesn't want to go on living with the pain. And it is a significant struggle that contributes to the psych ache. But the fact that we know that there is a conflict, we can maybe use when we talk to someone that we identify that have suicidal ideation. It is about understanding. The more we understand about suicide prevention, the more we understand about the warning signs, the more we can help the people we care about. Finding hope can be hard work for the people who are struggling with suicidal ideation, but that's where all of us are coming into play because we're learning about it. We're learning about it from people's perspective. We're learning about it from our perspective, from people who are might be in touch with those who struggle with suicidal ideation. The more we learn about it, the more and better chance we can do something to help. I want to talk about some myths about suicide because those myths really contribute to the stigma or the problems that surround suicide. And a lot of them, beside the fact that they're incorrect, when people do engage in suicidal ideation, because of those myths, they might not want to reach anybody. So we want to learn about it so we can correct those myths. And again, we also know that in some religions, suicide is a sin. So if I'm holding on to a specific religious belief, I might not going to tell someone from my religion because they might blame me. They might say that I'm a sinner. And if I'm already struggling, have this added stress, I probably don't want that. Some of the myths, and there's a lot, is if someone is suicidal, they will always remain suicidal. That is actually incorrect. Suicidal can be very much temporary and can be very much situational. The fact that someone was suicidal doesn't mean they're always going to be suicidal. So thinking about the fact that it's like a personality trait, it's like someone who is suicidal, that is actually incorrect. That is not a personality trait, and it's definitely not to be used to demean anybody. Number two, and that's very important, that's I think the most important. We shouldn't talk about suicide since it can encourage people to commit it. So we don't want to talk about suicide because we have this idea that if we will talk about it, it's like we're going to implant this idea in their head if they didn't have it, if they never thought about it. That is incorrect. You cannot implant an idea and have someone act upon something unless they already thought about it before. On the contrary, when we talk about suicide, we can actually open the discussion. When we're not talking about suicide, again, it's shrouded with mystery, it has this taboo, and we're just contributing to the judgments. Number three, only people with mental disorders are suicidal. That's again incorrect. And in a lot of the cases where people who survived suicide, when they were evaluated, actually at the time that they attempted suicide, they did not qualify on any diagnostic criteria. It is true that if I have a mental disorder, it might be contributing factor, but it doesn't mean that every person who is suicidal or have suicidal ideation has a mental disorder. Again, we want to make sure we reduce the stigma. Most suicides happen suddenly without warning. Actually, a lot of people that start having suicidal ideation, we can know about it if we talk to them. It's never a 1 minute thing. I just thought about it, and the next minute already I'm committing it. It's usually there is a lag time because, again, even people that have suicidal ideation or a plan, there is still a part in them that might not want to die. So it's not the idea that suicide happens suddenly without warning is incorrect. And if we are attuned and aware and can listen to the warning signal, we can help save lives. Someone who is suicidal is determined to die. Again, that's a misconception because even people that have plans or suicidal ideation, there's still a part of them that doesn't want to die. I still remember this case that I learned as I was training on suicide assessment and risk assessment, and a person who survived a suicide attempt, and he talked about how he was walking the San Francisco Bridge, and he walked all the way because he just tried to talk himself out of jumping from the bridge. And when he got to the other side, he told himself, if there's going to be one person, just one person who's going to ask me how I'm doing and going to care about me, I'm not going to commit suicide. And guess what happened? Someone actually contacted him, but that was a tourist that just wanted him to take a picture. So eventually he survived, but he did attempted suicide. So this is again just to say that even when there is a plan, there is still hope to talk someone out of it. People who talk about suicide don't mean to do it. And again, this is a myth that puts a lot of manipulation on people who do have suicidal behavior, which is not true. People who talk about suicide, usually we don't want to think about it as if they're just trying to manipulate us or they don't mean it. We want to take it seriously. And a lot of times when we ask someone, do you have suicidal thoughts? They're going to answer, they're going to respond honestly. And if they say yes, we want to take it seriously, not think that they are manipulating. A lot of times, people are very much in distress and they are calling for help. Another thing that is important when we talk about suicide is the whole idea of language matters. Because it's better to understand individual living with suicide behavior, it is important for us to adopt the correct language. So terms that we want to avoid are things like suicidal threat. When we say suicidal threat, it seems as if someone is manipulating, it's just making a threat. Or suicidal gesture. Gesture again is sounds either manipulative or very much unclear. What exactly is a gesture? Committed suicide. When we say committed, it's like someone committed a crime or committed rape. We don't want to put this lens of judgment of someone who, and I actually made a mistake during this talk that I actually used that language, which is incorrect. Committed suicide is not a language that should be used because it's not that someone is committing a crime. Successful or failed attempt. Again, it's like we're trying to put a prize or a failure. It's not good or bad. It's a very problematic behavior. We don't want to put success as a good thing about suicide. And if someone did not eventually was survivor of suicide, we don't want to call them failures. It's not a suicidal person. It's not a stigma or a disorder or just looking for attention. Again, the manipulative nature, or psycho, nuts, crazy, all of those judgments. We do want to use died by suicide, suicidal behavior that we know exactly what kind of constitute the behavior revolving suicide. Suicidal ideation, which is the thought about wanting to die. Suicide plan, when we have the plan and the means of how we want to die. Suicide attempt, that we actually attempt to die. And suicide survivor, not a failed attempt, is someone who attempted suicide but survived. Language should be respectful, not shaming. So when we talk about suicide, we also want to be aware of that. Why do we want to focus on suicide in migraine? Because we all are a migraine community. As we mentioned in the past, chronic pain and migraine can increase the risk of suicide, especially because of the pain. And so, because of this high risk, we want to open this up to discussion and learn what to do with that. But it's also very important, as I've learned working with people with migraine, the stigma, the misdiagnosis, the isolation that so much hurts so many people living with migraine is also relevant for people who have suicidal ideation. And so we want to acknowledge that and we want to open it up so people will not be afraid of revealing what to do and revealing what is it that they're really thinking about. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic disorder, all of those usually can co-occur with migraine. It's not a have to, but a lot of time it does. And because those can increase the risk of suicide, we want to focus on that. So this is why we're raising this topic, especially in this organization with people who are living with migraine. So the last part, so the second part of this webinar, I would like to focus on what can be done. Okay, we understood, we got it, we talked about suicide, but what is actually the things that we can do? These are going to be divided into 4 parts. Number 1, it's important to know the warning signs. We're going to talk about the warning sign. Each of those parts we're going to talk in depth. We want to know about the warning signs, the danger signals, and we want to pay attention to them. Number 2, how do we communicate? How do we talk to someone if we identify the warning signs? And the main important part is to ask directly. Are you thinking about suicide? are you thinking about killing yourself? Instead of saying, do you have thoughts of ending something? Or are you going to do something stupid, which is, judgmental? We also want to make a safety plan and reduce access to lethal mean. We're going to talk a little bit about it, and resources. Most resources is connecting to mental health providers who are trained in suicide prevention, but also, especially in cases of urgency, hotlines. We're going to give you all this information. I also want to mention that all of you should receive handouts with a lot of information that we probably won't be able to cover everything in here, but I found those handouts because I wanted everybody to have in case anybody needs them. So let's start with the risk factors. Risk factors, we've talked about some of them, can be health factors. Mental health condition, even though they're not mandatory, can be risk factor for suicide attempt. Depression, anxiety, especially if someone is schizophrenic or have a heightened anxiety. Substance use disorder, such as medication overuse or substance use, can also cause someone to attempt suicide, and lack of health care. Someone doesn't have health care, it can increase the risk of suicide. Environmental factors, as we talked about, especially stressful life events that could increase someone's psyche, especially cases like a death of someone that we loved, a divorce that can be painful, financial issues, or job loss. If someone is really after something that is really, really critical, it might be a risk factor. Again, it doesn't mean that each and every time we have those stressful life events, it automatically predisposes someone for suicide behavior, but it might. We just want to be aware of what propelled someone to think in those lines. Interpersonal harassment, bullying, abuse, relationship issues, loneliness, all problems that we have on the interpersonal nature can be a risk factor. Access to lethal mean is actually very important, especially firearms or narcotics. When someone has access to that, of course, naturally, it is much easier to go through it with a plan versus when I don't have that. Stigma associated with seeking help. We have some cultures that the honor of the person, honor of the family is very, very important. In those cultures, it could be that seeking help might shame the person or shame the family, so I should keep quiet, I should keep to myself, and I'm not going to seek help. But with that in mind, I'm just increasing my psych ache, and with that saying, I can get to the point that I'm just going to explode. Societal issues, like if I move to a different country and I have a problem with acculturation, with discrimination, again, all those interpersonal issues can also be a risk factor. And historical factors are also important for us to know. If someone had previous suicide attempts, or if there's family history of suicide, it's like I've constantly been around these incidences of suicide. Individuals that berate by suicide, if there's someone that is so close to me that I lost, it can definitely be a risk factor. Family history of substance abuse or mental disorders, or non-suicidal self-injurious behavior. I want to say, and again, most of the people in here, I'm assuming, are not licensed mental health providers, but it is important to notice that not every time someone does self-injury, like cutting with a razor blade, it doesn't mean automatically that this was a suicide attempt. However, it can be a risk factor, so we want to be aware of that. What are the warning signs? What is it that we want to really pay attention when we watch for warning signs of suicide? Number one, how someone talks. Talking about death, talking about everything being hopeless, being helpless, writing about wanting to die or death by dying, talking about being a burden, being a burden to others, being a burden to family. People might be better off without me. I have no reasons to live. I have no purpose in my life. I feel trapped. Uh, Trying to start saying goodbye to people when people start giving away their precious belongings. That also might be a warning sign. So we want to pay attention to either talk or how does someone communicate, either verbally or by writing. Do people talk about and helplessness, wanting to die, no purpose, and so forth and so on? Behaviors. If we know that someone is starting to look for means to kill themselves, like all of a sudden someone wants to purchase a gun and it's really not like them to wanting to have a gun. And they might have a very good idea or an excuse, but it just doesn't feel that it's them. Or wanting to have all of a sudden some toxic compound. Seeking access to pills or weapons or other means if someone is asking you about it, acting really recklessly or engaging in risky activities. It's as if I'm engaging in risky activities because I don't value my life anymore. That also should be a warning sign. Increase in substance use. If someone is withdrawing or isolating from family or from friends and don't want to talk to anybody, especially if they enjoyed being around people and all of a sudden like something changed and they just decide to be from themselves. People who overly aggressive or agitated, can't sleep, changing in eating habits. And again, I want to emphasize it doesn't mean that each and every time we're going to see that, that automatically it signifies that someone is thinking about suicide, but it is and it can be a warning sign that combined can lead us to think that something is wrong. Giving away prized possession, it's like, okay, I'm preparing to end things. Making a will, which again could be just a normal thing to do. I know that I made one, but we want to watch for what are the particular reasons that someone did that. Mood, feeling hopelessness, a, a sense of rage that simply cannot be resolved, or anger, sense of feeling trapped, loss of interest that nothing anymore is interesting to me, a very deep sense of emptiness that is not just a day or two, it's a prolonged period of time that these mood changes occur, feeling very, very vengeful, feeling a heightened depression, being humiliated, feeling some sense of guilt that is really, really deep, or sense of shame. And especially when we notice a dramatic shifts in mood, when there is it's too abrupt, there is too much dramatic shifts and it's for a prolonged period of time, we might want to start taking note of what exactly is going on, what is wrong. However, beside all of those warning signs, we also want to talk about the protective factors. So, access to effective behavioral health care can be a protective factor. Connectedness to individual, family, community, that's something I wish I had when I had those ideations. Life skills such as problem solving skills, coping skills, people that have the ability to adapt to change. When someone has a purpose in life, when someone knows that's the reason I want to wake up in the morning, or they have a purpose of something they want to do, which is also something we could explore with them. Cultural, religious, or personal belief that discourage suicide, these are also can be protective factors. So we do know the warning signs, but we also want to know the protective factors so we can maybe use them when we talk to someone. And with that in mind, now let's move to, okay, we know the warning signs. What can be some of the conversations? How do we actually talk about it? What do we actually say to the person? Number one, as much as it sounds silly, take a deep breath. You'd like to monitor your emotion. That's actually something that even clinicians, when they go through suicide training, this is the number one thing they want to be aware of. Just because when we hear someone or suspect that someone might have suicidal ideation, it's tough. It's tough for us. We might be panicking. We might be afraid. We might be angry at them if we care about them. We want to monitor emotions because No matter what we feel, we need to think about the other person. So we need to create a safe environment. We need to give ourselves plenty of time. Don't rush it. We're going to open up something. You don't know how long it's going to take. Please be wary that someone wants to talk to you. You want to keep noticing what they have to say. If we're engaging in this conversation, we also want to be prepared with resources. Also, for the possibility they're going to say, yes, I have thought about dying and I actually have a plan of making a suicide. We want to be prepared for that. During this conversation, a lot of us want to jump into fixing or problem solving mode. And it makes sense. We care about someone, but we want to listen much more than we talk. We want to let the person share what's going on with them. We also want to make sure we are supported. It's not easy talking to someone with suicidal ideation. It's not easy supporting someone. We want to make sure we have the resources to support them. So we want to make sure we have our own support in place. When we talk to someone again, we want to listen without judgment. We want to stay consistent and we want to also avoid toxic positivity. What that means is that don't rush into, but look how great things are. Look how wonderful your life can be. Look how this and how that. Don't try to convince someone because they can't see where they're at. And also, even though it makes perfect sense wanting to fix someone, please try not to fix someone because at that point, it's most important to just listen and have person open up with whatever is it that they want to tell you. So most important advice that I consider when talking to someone that has suicidal ideation, mostly listen and open the space for them to say whatever is it on their mind. When people feel accepted, it's much easier for them to open up. Things not to say. Oh, come on, just cheer up. We don't want to minimize someone who is in very much a dark place and they're experiencing psych ache. You know, other people have it worse. I really don't understand. Why is it that you're thinking that? We don't want to judge people. It's not about other people, it's about them, and everybody are individual. We don't want to compare someone to someone else because you don't know how much someone is in pain. You're overreacting. Again, the judgment. What's wrong with you when we again want to place a judgment as if someone is sick or something is wrong with them? Do you know how painful this will be for your family or friends? Again, trying to guilt people. And I understand that when we're trying to fix something or we want to prevent someone from doing something, this might be something we might say, but we don't want to guilt trip people because that's even worse. They're already in pain. Putting on them guilt is not going to fix the problem, it's only going to make it worse. Guilt tripping them by saying what you're doing is wrong or it's a sin according to our religion, that is probably not going to help. And especially saying, stop this nonsense, stop this craziness, just, get a grip. All of those things we might not want to say to someone who is struggling. How do we want to start a conversation? We want to start a conversation with openness and with compassion and noticing the things that we've noticed that might be a problem. For example, Sherry, that's just a made up name. I've noticed some changes in you recently, and this is really worrying me. You used to do this and that, and lately, you're not enjoying this. You're not doing this. What is going on? If it's some of your family, if like your kid, Mom, it's not like you to avoid your friends, and I also heard you say so and so, and that's really not like you. What is going on? If I'm a significant other and saying something like, Sweetheart, I'm very worried about you. You don't seem yourself. It seems as if you're not eating, you're not enjoying things, you're withdrawn all the time. I'm really worried about you. Could you tell me what's going on? This is a way, an example to start a conversation. Then it's perfectly okay and required to be direct. It's better to be direct than to ask something vague that you actually don't know the answer. So instead of saying, are you thinking of doing something silly? Or do you feel that everything is hopeless? It's actually asking them the direct question. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about killing yourself? It would give you an answer. I know it might be tough, but that's the only way that we can actually get an answer. We want to inquire and ask people what they're going through, not from a judgmental point, but we want to open up. Have you thought about how you would do that? Have you made a plan? Usually, if people made a plan, that is even more dangerous. We want to make sure we have something to do about it. When do you feel the most pain? What exactly is happening to you before that leads you to think about it from an empathic point of view, not from a judgmental point of view? What have you done if someone had several attempts in the past? What have you done in the past that actually stopped you, which may give you an idea of how to help them? Again, these are all from a caring, not from a judgmental perspective. So I just want to recap of all the things to say. If you sense that something is wrong, I know it might be difficult, but don't delay. Someone might be in real danger. Prepare to have resources before you attempt to talk to someone. Just make sure you know what to ask and prepare of what the answer that you might get. You might get a yes, I do have suicidal ideation. Find the words to have this difficult conversation. We just give you an example. It's important to express concern, mention specific things that you notice so that people would know, hey, he cares about me. And ask directly, are you thinking about killing yourself or are you thinking about suicide? Next, number three, we're ending in a short while. Playing for safety. It's important to know if someone has access to lethal means, a gun, poison, medication, razor blade, rope. Ask them, okay, as we mentioned before, how are you planning to do that? If you do notice that someone has access to lethal arms, you might want to have a plan with someone to limit their access. If they do have a gun at their home, make some agreement with them so that the gun would be stored outside of the house. If they have some medication or other means or toxins, limit access. Again, this is something you are going to converse with them, but at least it's an open conversation. Help them identify signs of crisis, thoughts that might propel them, mood that might propel them, situation, behavior, all of those triggers that might propel them to go ahead and actually uh, um, try to kill themselves. Identify what can be done to take their mind off the problems and make a list of who to call. It could be family, trusted individuals, professionals, crisis lines. We did send you a PDF with a safety plan. You can use that PDF, you can take it with you, and all of that is written in there of how to identify signs, how to identify what can be done, who to call, all of that is in the safety plan. So we talked about the warning sign, how to talk to someone. When you talk to someone, how to plan for safety. And these are the main important things to seek help immediately. Number one, if someone is talking about immediate harm to oneself or others, if they have a plan and have the means to go on with their plans. I have a gun, it's here, it's loaded. Once you leave my house, I'm going to use it. Acting in an erratic manner that you're concerned about people's safety. When you notice all of those, don't delay. Call 988 or other hotlines that we're going to give you in a minute. Don't delay when you see those important warning signs. These are some resources. There are more. That's why we're giving you PDFs. These are some of the known suicide crisis lines. 988, which is the easiest to remember, you can either call or text. The crisis text line, the 741-741, it's free 24/7. All of those are free 24/7 and are confidential. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, which I know it's a little harder to remember, but that's another option. So you have the resources. We talked about the warning signs, the danger signals. We talked about the talk, how to talk, what to say, making a safety plan, and these are the resources. These are, in my opinion, the most important things that everybody here would need to know. I know we ran out of time. I just want to summarize. If you're the one that are listening in, and if you're the one that's feeling that way, please let us know. You are not broken. You are not diseased. We want to help you. But the pain isn't permanent. I know it might feel like it, but there is always hope and help exists. We want to help. Please let us know. Don't carry this alone. Please, we've helped many people in the past. We want to help everybody that we can. I want to skip those just because we're in the midst of time, but you will get the slides. Just in short, should you or should you not call 911? It is the logical thing to do, but it might be more appropriate to call those hotlines that we mentioned. So I just wanted to recap what we've discussed so far. So we probably won't have time to the video, so I just want to make sure we have time for questions. But I do want to say that there are stories of survival of people who never thought they would get better. Actually, I'm one of them because I actually told myself you're on borrowed time and I got better. So I do believe everybody can get better. With that in mind, just as we recap, we've given you this test of suicide prevention knowledge. We've talked about the critical warning signs, whether you should never ask someone if they're wanting to go, if they think about suicide. We know it's false. 3 ways to help someone who is having thoughts about suicide. We've given you all the 4 things to do, and at least 2 suicide prevention resources. We've given you 3 hotlines. So with that in mind, I hope that you're still here. I really hope it was helpful. I really hope we contributed. The fact that you're here is already a victory. I really want to thank all of you for being in here. I know we're really bit out of time, but I'm willing to stay if anybody have any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And again, thank you, all of you, for being in here.
Thank you very much. I would also like to thank everyone for being here with us tonight. Dan, thank you for such a compassionate educational webinar. Your own personal experience means a lot. Thank you for sharing that with all of us as well. Dan, if you don't mind showing, we have another webinar coming up.
Sure.
On June 18th at 7 o'clock Eastern time with Dan as well. Dan will be introducing us to emotional awareness and expression therapy and how it can help migraine and chronic pain. I will put the message in the the link in the Q&A. We will also include this in the follow-up email that we send out to all of you. The email will include a recording. It may take a day or two for us to get that processed and uploaded. And we'll also include the video, Dan, and the additional resources that you had wanted to share with everyone. So, all right. Now it looks like, do I have a question? You may have another question. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay if anybody has any additional questions or anything.
Okay.
This is an important topic, so I'm happy to
Okay.
contribute as much time as needed.
Thank you. I think we're okay. And if anyone has an additional question, I will include an email, my email in the follow-up email. Please feel free to reach out to any of us, the Danielle Foundation and or Dan. We appreciate all of you being here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan.